All right, everybody. I am back in the square today. What we got for you? Jrue Holiday mock trade scenarios. We did Jaylen Brown 2 episodes ago or so. Greg filled in last time with my guy Brett. Shout out to Brett for coming through, and congrats to the Indiana Pacers for moving on to the NBA Finals. Bing bong. We'll talk a little bit about the Knicks making their exit. So we got trade scenarios. We've got an NBA Finals matchup, Thunder Pacers, all that and more coming up next here on Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, likely the first one that has ever been recorded in a hospital lobby. As always, this is your boy Will here checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, one and only Greg Benakis. Greg, I'm gonna try and bring as much lively energy as I can, but it's also in this kind of
It's very NPR right now.
voiced. Yeah. I was thinking as I was, sleuthing around the lobby of the hospital looking for a place to record a podcast, which again, I'm unofficially pretty sure this is the first time this has ever happened in this hospital's lobby. And I was like, I wonder if I'm going to have to do this kind of ASMR style. Jrue Holiday to the Dallas Mavericks. Greg, what do you think?
I think it's fucking awesome, Will.
Yeah,
that'd be a great dynamic back and forth. Do you want
that's by the way, that very much was watching a clip earlier today. That's like how Parks and Rec always had like the weird random like fake NPR little town bits in it. That feels like when they did the Pawnee Eagleton merger, one guy screaming, one guy doing ASMR. Like that feels like pretty perfect for like the combo in there.
Do you want to give any sort of context for the people to explain why you are in a hospital lobby right now?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it before. Had a baby girl. She was. I can't get too. I don't want to get too much into it, but she's born premature, very healthy. But we're on the path towards getting back home. So, we're almost there. And so, So I don't know what my schedule is going to be this week. So this was the best time for me to get this recorded. We've been trying to get this second part up here for a little bit. So wanted to listen. This is dedication, folks. This is what it is. This is what it looks like. Hospital lobby, getting some content out in the off season. Celtics already eliminated from the postseason, licking our wounds. This is what it looks like when you are on the grind. So, Greg, you've been doing a tremendous job holding down the fort without me here. So I wanted to help you get at least one piece of content out this week. Hopefully, as we see what happens with developments in the finals, any other rumors that come out, that will, at least for the next week or so, probably be on you to try to get something out, or see if we can pull in a guest and maybe do some other type of coverage. But hopefully at least once a week for the next couple of weeks or so, I'll be able to get a pod up. But this is what I got to do this week. So sometimes it is what it is, and you find a corner of a very bright lobby that honestly I forgot it was this bright and this open. Luckily it's a Sunday night, and this is one discovery I've had is hospitals are actually pretty not desolate, but they're just a lot quieter on the weekends than I would have expected. I don't know why I thought it'd be busier, but it's makes for good lighting. What's that?
It's not like you're in the ER. I feel like the ER where it gets popping,
Yeah. It's not the pit, right? Like I'm not like not like in the pit on HBO, like in a corner trying to record this. There's a Starbucks around the corner. Like it's gonna be okay. So in good spirits. Hopefully this will be the first and only time that I end up doing a recording like this. But if you're watching on YouTube, that's why my background is very, very bright, and there's a stark contrast to Greg's man cave right now.
That's great. I was actually at Matt Liptak, who's our Knicks correspondent on the pod. His wife Kayla, it was her birthday, or she's celebrating her birthday, not her actual birthday, but she was celebrating her birthday at their house today. So they had some people over at their pool, and she came up to me and we were kind of just making small talk, and she was like, "So What's been going on with the podcast since Will's just been like MIA? Have you like what do you have to tell somebody? Do you have to like call the people at your company and let them know that like Will's not going to be around for a little
Hey,
bit? Like, how does
just
that
quick
work?
PSA, Blue Wire. Shout out to you guys, but I'm not getting any type of paternity leave over here. There's no paternity pay from Blue
Yeah.
Wire.
No paternity leave whatsoever. So I was just like, yeah, I mean, I've kind of just been holding it down. Like your husband's been on the pod a couple times. I was like, I'm sure you listen to that, right? And she was like, no. She was like, I did not listen. I've never listened to your guys' podcast. She was like, I see the social media clips. I was like, listen, Kayla, you're not a basketball fan, you're not a Celtics fan. I would be shocked if you listen to any part of our podcast. So I appreciate you even knowing that we have a podcast.
Right. Well, we'll take we'll take that as a win. Just knowing that we have it, and occasionally you might mention it to somebody. That's the win. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all we need. That's all we need.
It's
But
like when my dad like knows that I'm in a band and he'll call me from an Uber sometimes and I'll hear one of my songs playing and then my dad will be like, "Hey Greg, hey buddy, I got you a new fan. I got you a new fan. I'm playing some music in an Uber right now." And I'm like, "Dad, thanks so much. Thanks so much." And he still tells people when he talks about the pod. He's like, "Yeah, my son has a podcast. It's called the 617 podcast." I'm like,
yeah,
"Dad, that was many years ago. We are
yeah,
now
it's
called
like three
Green with
years ago.
Envy." Like, oh my God. But he's very well intentioned. So shout
how
out to trying.
how often does he call you from an Uber, getting someone to play either Menegas music or Black Sheep Optimists?
It's happened at least 3 times.
That's too many.
Yeah, that's a lot of times.
That's just
Or or
straight
he
up
or
too
he'll be,
many.
like, showing a house because he's a realtor, and then he'll
Yeah.
just be, like, shooting the shit with somebody, and I will come up somehow, and all of a sudden, my music's playing, and he's, like, telling somebody he's trying to, like, sell a house to that his son lives down in Austin,
What
Texas,
if
has a podcast
what
about
if
the Celtics, and makes rap music.
what if as your dad's staging houses, he's, in his mind, subtly playing your music in the background to try and get people to ask about the music. Oh, this song right here, summertime. Yes, don't you guys love buying houses in the summertime? Yeah, it's a great time. This is my son. He's a rapper in Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Well, he
Uh,
makes the rap, the hip hop rap music. He makes that kind of music.
oh god, shout out to what's your dad's realty company? Menegas Properties.
Manekas companies.
Menegas Companies. Shout out to Menegas Companies. If you guys are looking for, this is a free advertisement here, just because he's hooking you up, so we might as well hook him up here. Menegas Companies. If you guys are looking for anything to buy or rent in the, is it just Dorchester or Boston area? What's
Let's just say Boston, but I'm pretty sure it's just Dorchester.
all right? Well, if you live in Boston, Menegas Companies, look it up, go find it. We got a realtor for you. Greg, let's switch gears here. Let's
Okay.
actually get into some off-season basketball here, and you know, it obviously, once again, it sucks that the Celtics aren't just playing real basketball. Uh, but as you and Brett were talking about, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun playing fantasy GM, and it feels like with everything that's going around the league, Windhorst was talking about this recently. Like, there's been more activity in front offices with people calling different, people calling people, just talking around, like what's happening, and it's the second apron, which for a team like the Celtics it forces us to have these episodes where we're talking about trading Jaylen Brown, trading Jrue Holiday. We'll have to talk about Chris Stapps. We'll have to even talk about Derek White at some point. And makes you have those tough conversations. But everyone in the league is in some shape or form having these conversations. And I think right now, with the Pacers going to the NBA Finals and a team that feels really unexpected, I think there's a lot more teams that are all of a sudden like, man, we're actually probably closer than we think. Like, maybe we're a
Mhm.
Pascal Siakam trade, which I think people thought was a nice contention trade. All of a sudden, he's an Eastern Conference Finals MVP and they're in the finals. So I think a lot of teams are trying to figure out where they're at, and it's leading to a lot of movement. So that brings us to where the Celtics are at. We set this all up. They got to get under. They got to save some money here. Jason Tatum out from likely most of the year, if not all of the year. It just changes the dynamics. So Jrue Holiday, in my opinion, Greg, and let's just start here. I think he's the most likely candidate to get traded. Do you agree with that? Let's just start there. Do you think he's the most likely candidate out of the potential options on the Celtics, impactful options on the Celtics to get moved?
Yeah, of all the guys, that are making over 25 million on the team right? I think he's probably the most likely, just because I think a
Essentially, the
team.
top five, the starting five.
Right, the starting 5. I think a team could talk themselves into Jrue being the missing piece for a team that's, like, on the brink of contending. Teams out there like the Dallas Mavericks have been rumored. I think even a team like the Orlando Magic could might be able to talk themselves into a Jrue Holiday. There's just some teams out there that, if they squint hard enough, that contract doesn't
Well,
look doesn't look too big.
right, and we'll get to the contract here in a second, but let's go here because I was gonna bring this up as a question. Like, let's rattle off what are some of the teams that we think could actually be interested, because the Celtics return, we know, is gonna be, honestly, with Jrue Holiday, less about players and more about how much money they can save and how many picks they either do or don't have to send out because of the contract situation. But you were kind of laying out where I'm at when it comes to what teams can squint and see this as a good or viable move for them. And I think there's kind of two camps, and you hit it with two different examples. One is the team that's in win now mode, right? Like, we
Mhm.
need another veteran, specifically, championship veteran presence, still can, give you top level defense, and ideally, or at least theoretically, gives you spacing, with their ability to shoot the basketball. Like, those are the veteran teams that are close, that can really justify, like, maybe 3 years isn't great, but if we win a championship in a year or two with this contract, then it's well worth it. And we
Mhm.
can, we can swallow the last year or two if we get to the finals or get close or wherever their goal is. And then the other end of the spectrum is a team like the Magic that you brought up, that are on the way up, and having a guy like Holiday has the benefits of, he can bring something on the court, but honestly, off the court is where he might even have more of a value. And so to you, that 3 years, 105 million is something that is more valuable than just what it might be to teams in other scenarios. So, with that being said, you mentioned let's start at the first end, which is like the old, not even necessarily older, but just the win now teams that might
Mhm.
think Jrue Holiday is the missing piece. I
Yeah.
mentioned, like, who's the Pascal Siakam that they want to trade for that maybe puts them to that next level.
Right.
You mentioned the Mavericks. I think they're probably the number one team that I identify to fit this need. Is there anyone else that jumps to the top of your mind that's kind of similar in that same vein?
I'm kinda just doing this real time right now, so I've got just ESPN pulled up. It's just like a list of teams and whatnot, and I think what makes the Mavs interesting, right, is they have owners with pockets, and they also have a GM who's desperate, right? He needs to double, triple down, whatever it is, in order to bring home a championship to justify trading Luka, right? So
And I,
that's
and
like
I don't know if you heard this, Greg. This is something that I think gets overlooked in this whole situation. Is, defense wins championships. A lot of not enough people are saying that,
yes.
and that's some real outside the box thinking from that front office.
It is, it is. It's, they talk about finding those market inefficiencies, and I think that Nico Harrison is really figuring it out. So I think the Clippers are a team that kind of
Yep,
just came to
they're
mind, a veteran team that has a shit ton of money that needs to win. And, when you look at their roster, James Harden has that, I think it's a player option. Yeah, it's a player option at 36 million. I would imagine James Harden is coming back to that team, right? So
mhm.
maybe he doesn't sign for 36. Maybe he signs for, 25 over the next 3 years. He's probably going to ask for 36 around there. I mean, he played pretty well this year. But then they have guys like Norm Powell, who's an expiring contract at 20.5 million. They've got Bogdanovich, who makes 16, Zubac, who
Mhm.
they're not getting rid of. So he'll
Yeah.
he'll be on the team.
Derek
But then
Jones, I
Derek
think, is ten
Jones,
million.
10
Yeah.
million, right? Chris
Chris
Dunn's at 5.
Dunn's 5 million. They can cobble together those middle tier contracts to
Right.
get to what you need to.
Right. So I think that's probably the first team that kind of comes to mind, those veteran laden teams that just, could convince themselves they are Jrue Holiday away, and they look at
Mhm.
the people on their roster and they're like, like, what did they really do for us last year?
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think those are easily the top two examples. And as we start to get into some mock trades, those are two teams that are very prevalent in a couple that I spun together that I could see making sense. It was harder to do, but I think, like, Lakers, Warriors, you can throw them in there. I don't think Holiday necessarily fits like what they would take the gamble for. Those are probably actually more potentially Porzingis destinations, to be honest, of, if they were looking for a 1-year gamble, like that might be someone. And there's a lot of complications with those teams being very high tax paying teams as well, too. So it gets complicated. There's a whole bunch of multi-team scenarios, but I think those 3 to 4 teams kind of fit that first mold. And then the second side of it, like you mentioned, I think is that Magic. And this is where I would put the Pistons potentially in that mix. And, Rockets, they're more on a contending-ish level than I think the Magic or Pistons, although the East is going to be weird next year, and we don't really know. So who knows? The Pistons and Magic could make some pretty big leaps, just given on, what the circumstances of the East might be. But for the Rockets, I could see them talking themselves into it, defensive-minded coach with Ime. So those are some of the young teams that I think might, and then there's just like a whole middle pile of teams. I'm just like, if you want to trade for Jrue, I just think I think this offseason is going to tell us a lot about who's the smart front offices and who's, potentially the really dumb front offices. And that's where it's like, I don't know, like there was a rumor that the Kings have interest in Jrue Holiday. That makes no sense to me, but they've already got DeRozan, Levine, and Sabonis, and they're just like, yeah, Jrue Holiday is the answer. I mean, sure. Like that's the wild card that you can't account for.
It's a team that maybe could convince themselves Jrue Holiday is the type of guy that they need. And I'm just thinking off the top here. So if this sounds stupid tomorrow morning, I apologize, everybody. Cavs. I think the Cleveland Cavs, they could convince themselves that, the Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell backcourt isn't big enough. It doesn't have enough defense. And Garland's been notoriously hurt over the last couple of years. Tried to play in the playoffs with that toe injury, but clearly wasn't the same guy. Gutted it out, I guess, to some degree. But he's making, 39, 40, in 27, 28, he's making 45 million. Do you think Darius Garland is a $45 million guy in 27, 28? Like, you could make the argument that his contract, the longer it goes, the worse it looks. So maybe there's a world in which it's a 3-team deal, because I don't think the money can work with the with Garland and Holiday, right? So
that's the crazy part is that
deal.
Absolutely can't work with Garland going back to this. Garland could go elsewhere and someone else comes to the Celtics. Like,
I don't want Garland on the Celtics, to be honest with you.
It's an interesting case, right? Because like, I think you and I both like Darius Garland. He's a really good player, but you just see time and time again a guy of that size, and it's part of why when I looked at the Cavs from at least the Celtics perspective, I kind of had trouble being like, yeah, they're going to beat us 4 times in 7 games. Like, I know we got beat by the Knicks and Brunson is small, but Brunson's
I can't believe we lost to the fucking Knicks, man.
Yeah, we're recording this on a Sunday, day after the Knicks were eliminated by the Pacers, and yeah, it's still really tough to swallow as this goes on longer and longer, and it just comes back to you can't blow 2 20-point leads and another 14-point lead. Like,
yeah, it's funny, man. I was talking to Liptak in the pool today, and I was like, "How you doing, man? You licking your wounds?" We were just kind of talking about the series. And he was like, "Man, I really feel like if we had won game 1, we would have won the series." And I was like, "No shit, like, dude. How do you think we fucking
imagine if your team did it 3 times, not just once, and you feel like you could have won the series. We did it 3 times. 3 times. And the thing is, like, you can't. Yes, Celtics retrospectively they were injured. That's not why we fucking lost. We did it. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Knicks, credit, they won. They came in. They kind of punked us mentally, but it should have never been to that point. Just never should have gotten to that point. All right, it's old pet history. It's in the past. We're here now, and we're discussing Jrue Holiday mock trade. So, Greg, we've talked a little bit about some of the teams and what they could do. So let's just throw a couple out there. I've got a few here, and let's just bounce around, and we'll just kind of, the numbers are what they are. These have gone through Spot Track. I've tried to do my best to see if these can actually work. There's going to be mistakes. And if you guys have some trades that, you think are better, send it to us, DM us at GreenMVPod, celticsnoise at gmail.com. Send it over to us. We want to know what you guys think. So here's a couple. Not all of them I love. These are just some that I think could make some semblance of sense, and we'll just kind of go from there. So here's the first one I'll throw at you, Greg. And you and Brett did a really good thing last pod where Brett was like, I love these mock trades. It's kind of difficult to follow when you're listening to a podcast. So I'm going to do my best here to try to make sure that we lay this all out here. So first trade that I have for you to discuss. It's a 3-teamer. Most of these, I think just about all these are going to be 3-teamers, if not 4-teamers. Celtics, Pistons, and Mavericks. Celtics sending out Jrue Holiday, and in return, they're getting Simone Fontecchio, Klay Thompson, and saving $7.4 million. Detroit Pistons sending out Fontecchio, and in return, they're getting Caleb Martin and Jaden Hardy. Mavericks sending out Jaden Hardy, Klay Thompson, and incoming is Jrue Holiday. Picks, we got to figure that out. For some of these trades, I put them in, like I said last time. Otherwise, it's let's haggle over that later. Picks are picks. We can kind of talk more about it. But on a base level, Greg, looking at this from a Celtics perspective, Fontecchio comes in. He's kind of just to really make salary work and a little bit of a flyer on a somewhat younger guy that kind of gives you an idea that you can kind of just get a free look at. He's an expiring contract. Klay Thompson, all you're really doing is trading Jrue Holiday, who's got 3 years and $105 million for a guy that has 2 years and about 34 million left. So you're getting off of some of that money. As you see for those on YouTube, you can see that on the screen right now. This for me, I think the biggest question, there's 2 questions that I have. One is, if this were a trade, do you think the Celtics would have to throw in a pick?
I mean, this is a tough one, man. It's a bunch of like one man's trash is another man's treasure type of trade.
A lot of slop.
A lot of slop in this one. I mean, I don't think the Celtics have to throw in a trade, to be honest with you. I mean, throw in a pick, to be honest with you, because I think Holiday is by far the best player in this deal, right?
Right.
And I think the Mavs, like, they're that team that's squinting really hard at that contract, and they're like, hey, if we win a championship next year, they can talk themselves into Kyrie, coming back mid-year, which you probably will, coming back from an ACL, a Kyrie Jrue backcourt. It's a pretty nice backcourt, man. It's a pretty nice backcourt. And Klay Thompson didn't really do all that much for them. Once Luka's off that team, like, Klay doesn't
his
really
value's
fit.
not the same.
Exactly. So, Jrue Holiday made a lot of sense with Anthony Davis at one point in their past. They were probably the best pick and roll defensive combo in the league 7 years ago. And they're not the same defenders they were 7 years ago, but I believe that they still could be pretty damn good with with the other pieces around them, because they've still got Najee Marshall, they've still got PJ Washington, Derek Lively, all these guys. Cooper Flag, yeah, fucking forgot they got the first pick in the draft for a second.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Well, so you brought something up right there, and that I want to ask you. In the Mavericks, I think are the most likely Jrue Holiday destination, which means most likely it's not going to happen that he's going to Dallas. But it feels like, with all the pieces we mentioned, them talking about their window, defense wins championships, if they can, give up a few marginal rotation pieces and just replace them with Jrue Holiday, like it just seems like that's one of the few places that would make sense for a 3-year stay for Jrue Holiday. And it kind of fits everything that they've been saying and doing, since the Luka trade. And for them to make it work, so in this particular trade, I put Klay Thompson in, right? Because Jrue for Klay is essentially, when you look at the Mavericks, they're like, oh, we're just replacing Klay and Jrue. I don't think the Celtics are really like super excited to bring in Klay. It's just, you're going to save $7-8 million. You get an expiring contract in Fontecchio, and it's just 1 extra year versus 2 extra years that you have with Jrue Holiday.
Tell you what, Will, Joe Mazzulla would love Klay Thompson on the team.
You think?
For Mazzulla ball?
For Mazzulla ball, yeah. I mean, Klay's defense has slipped pretty significantly. That's the part that I think for me is like, yes, I think from a 3-point shooting standpoint, yes, Klay Thompson.
Is he a worse defender than Sam Hauser?
That's fair. That's a good point. That's a good point. So yeah. So I mean, I think then again, Sam Hauser couldn't play in the playoffs. So that's so that's where it gets tricky. But then again, this is kind of a 2-year process where you're trying to set yourself up to be in a good spot when Tatum comes back. That's kind of the way my outlook is for all of these trades. But from the Mavericks standpoint, if they're going to be involved in a Jrue Holiday trade, the thing that I keep coming back to is so Klay's got 2 more years at basically $16 million each. They've got both PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford at right around 14-15 million. So those are all 3 guys that in some form or capacity, if there's a Holiday trade, are going to be involved. Gafford, I have another trade coming up here in a little bit where I think he's enticing for the Celtics because it's an expiring contract. You get a free look at potentially replacing, or replenishing that front court, which is going to be, potentially hemorrhaged when with KP on an expiring, Luke and Al. We don't know what's going to happen there. So I think that's appealing. But the part that I keep coming back to is how good do you think PJ Washington is? Because I feel like in all of the trades that I keep looking at, everyone's going to make a joke about Nico not being the smartest GM in the world. And yeah, listen, when you trade Luka, that comes with that territory. But I keep wanting to find a way that PJ comes back to the Celtics for Jrue Holiday because I like PJ Washington quite a bit. He's on expiring, so that changes the equation a little bit. But
yeah.
I think PJ Washington's pretty damn good. And I always feel like if we're going to get PJ back, it's just going to end up the point that I asked earlier about will this cost us a pick, even though it's expiring. I feel like PJ is going to cost more, whatever that means. Maybe it doesn't mean, a first round pick. Maybe it means a couple seconds or whatever. What are your thoughts on kind of the Klay Thompson, Daniel Gafford, and PJ Washington? Like, I think PJ is clearly the best out of those three, but I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The first thing I like about PJ is that he is not scared of anybody, and he plays super tough. For a team that clearly lacked toughness this postseason, like I would welcome anybody that's willing to throw down with somebody on the other team and is not going to let, Karl Towns just push you around for 6 games and Jalen Brunson to do his bullshit for 6 games. Like, sorry, Lip Tack, we're still friends. But just like all these guys, Mikal Bridges was punking the Celtics in that series. And like, it was alarming, the lack of fight that we saw out of some of the guys on the Celtics.
All the talk of are we going to miss the Marcus Smart toughness, which never came up last year, was kind of what we were missing a little bit this year.
Exactly. And PJ, he's a big dude. He's like 6'7.5", can shoot a little bit, can play some really good defense. Pretty sure he's this year or last year he was the primary defender on Shea, wasn't he?
I was gonna say that's like one of the reasons that the Mavericks beat the Thunder last year was PJ Washington, both offensively and defensively. Like offensively, he kind of had an out of body experience with like some of the threes he was hitting. Kind of like who was it last night for the Pacers? Thomas Bryant just knocking down threes.
That's crazy. Hey, when you blow games early in a series, that's what happens. You leave yourself very vulnerable to the Thomas Bryant game. But yeah, I think PJ is definitely the best return in that deal. I've always liked PJ. I think because his contract's coming up, I think it would definitely be the number at which PJ signs for. Because I think if you get PJ at $20 million a year, 20 to 24, that's a really good value contract for him.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like if the Celtics could pull it off to get PJ back, like you get him for the 1 year expiring, and then I really love the idea of you continue to try to reset the books this offseason with maybe dumping Hauser and moving Shireman into that spot. And then you try to trade KP, or KP just comes off the books by the time Tatum's back and healthy. And then if, I like the idea of PJ Washington with Derek White and the Jays and Peyton Pritchard, and you got to figure out the center spot. But like, I really like that grouping of individuals. So definitely. I've got one more Mavericks trade here for you, Greg. Okay. So while we're talking about it, let me go there because Daniel Gafford's another guy that I think, like I said, would have appeal. So here's another Celtics trade that involves the Mavericks. And this time we're going to bring in the Chicago Bulls, which who knows what the hell the Chicago Bulls are doing or what they're thinking. So that's one of those, I think, along with, like I mentioned, the Kings, a few of these franchises that are just complete wild cards. No clue what they're going to do. So here's what I got laid out. For the Celtics, outgoing is Jrue Holiday. Incoming is Lonzo Ball and Daniel Gafford. Lonzo Ball is on a 2-year, $20 million deal. This would save the Celtics $8 million for the upcoming season. For the Bulls, outgoing is Lonzo Ball, and incoming is Caleb Martin and Najee Marshall. For the Mavericks, outgoing, Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin, Daniel Gafford, incoming, Jrue Holiday. Let's break that down, Greg. Celtics, Lonzo Ball, Daniel Gafford, save $8 million. How you feeling?
So Lonzo is another guy that I've always liked. I think the ideal of Lonzo Ball is exactly what you've seen in Tyrese Halliburton, right? Over the last couple of years. When Lonzo came out, he was very much what Halliburton has become. That was the dream of Lonzo Ball, right? Obviously injuries have derailed his career, and never finding that 3-point shot to the degree that he needed obviously derailed his development to some degree. So I've always liked Lonzo. Daniel Gafford, we need to find a center. Like Al Horford probably is not going to be on the Celtics. So I think having a center and somebody that is a legit center that you can put at the back line of your defense and feel pretty good about. Gafford's somebody that I've always liked, man. The fact that he's on an expiring contract, as long as you can keep him in that $15 million range, and there's not a team out there that's willing to pay him into the low 20s to mid 20s. That's where it starts to get tricky, man, with all the cap resetting and all the cap machinations that the Celtics need to do. These guys that teams are going to have to get smart. And at some point, there's not going to be enough money to go around for all these dudes. So like a guy like Daniel Gafford might have to just look around and be like, man, 17 million a year is pretty damn good. Like I'm making a good living at $17 million a year.
And for the Celtics, it's a free 1 year, somewhat free 1 year look, right? Like you're not committed to and that's part of this. And John Corrales made a really good analogy that I liked a couple days ago on Twitter. Have you ever seen those videos where it's like Greg is like, hey, can I trade a paperclip up to a house, right? Like how do I keep making these different trades, but in reverse, right? Like a Jrue Holiday is at 32 million. How do I trade down to 25 million and then get to 20 million? And so like, I think getting a lot of these expiring contracts that are coming back is kind of part of that, right? Like how do I get from 32? Like this saves $8 million, right? And then I'm going to try and dump Sam Hauser to the Nets, with his 10 million, and now we're at 18 million and we're 2 million away from getting under the second apron. Like I think it's a little bit of that mentality. And in this trade, this is one of the few trades where I was like, okay, I would actually be pretty excited to see what the upside of this could be. Because Lonzo, I think and I wasn't, certainly locked in towards the end of the bowl season, but I know people started to feel like, hey, Lonzo's like kind of rounding a little bit back into form. And so, you bring Lonzo into the Jrue Holiday spot, but you make him a reserve. You move Peyton Pritchard and Derek White as your starting backcourt. You play Lonzo Ball 20, 25 minutes a night, and you kind of see what's left there. And it's a 2-year, $20 million deal. Like that's movable, right? That's that mid-range salary that you can use, especially if you get out of the aprons and you can get back to a place where you can cobble salary together to make moves. Like that's fine. Like I think you're okay there. And then, like you said with Gafford, like we got to find something long-term in the front court, and maybe it's him, maybe it's not. But, if he comes in and let's say KP is still here, like they can play together. They can kind of, go on and off the court.
They did play together in Washington.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know what their numbers look like, but I completely forgot about that. But you're right. They did play together. So there's a familiarity in some sense. So you can utilize that. And then, if KP is gone, you're kind of looking like, hey, Gafford, can you be an anchor here, went back? Because once again, everything to me is just when Tatum comes back, who are going to be the pieces that you can commit to around him. And so next year is an audition for whoever comes in. And if, off of whatever trades are made, for a lot of them, it's just an audition. And then you got to, like, to your point, figure out, okay, can we keep you at 15? Can we keep you below 20? And Gafford has talked about recently about wanting to be paid like a starting center. And I think that's part of the reason for the Mavericks. They're like, well, we've got our 2-year, 3-year window, whatever Nico has said it is, and we've got Anthony Davis. We're certainly committed to Derek Lively and Cooper Flagg as major pieces of our future. Like we're not going to pay you starting center money at that point. You know what I mean? So I think for them that there is some sense there. So I think that's one of the trades for Jrue that I probably like the most. A lot of the other things I'm going to throw at you here, just not fun. One I'll just give you quickly because I brought this up during the regular season, and I think you might have actually puked at the time, and you're probably going to do so again, but it gets back to the Corrales paperclip analogy in reverse. But Celtics, Pistons, very simple. Jrue Holiday for Tobias Harris. You save about $6 million. He's an expiring contract. That's all it is. It's not fun. It's not shiny. It's the Pistons looking for what they think is going to be an upgrade in a playoff run, a guy to kind of mentor Cade and Jaden Ivey and Asar, which is once again, like maybe they don't even have playing time for it. And I don't know. I don't love that one. That's just, hey, here's $6 million that you can save. And then even if you can't find a way to get off KP, there's $56 million that's coming off next year instead of, for Jrue Holiday, which we haven't even mentioned this part, his salary is escalating. So it only goes up more next year, the next 2 years. So it gets probably even harder to move. It's just a really tricky slope if you don't get off. So I think getting off of Jrue Holiday's contract is the priority. So even if you can lessen that burden, that's the appeal there. It's not a very sexy podcast topic to talk about.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to entertain any idea of Tobias Harris on the Celtics. Make it a 3-team deal and we could talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that would be great for the Pistons. I think if the Pistons wanted to make some noise, Jrue Holiday is exactly the type of dude that I think would work really well in Detroit.
Yep. Okay, let's move on here. You mentioned the Clippers earlier, right? And we also mentioned the Kings as kind of like the Bulls. Let's just throw them in here. Who knows what they're trying to do? They might be a team that wants to get involved, and maybe they get a pick. Maybe they give up a pick, and you can't explain it. I feel like those type of teams. That's what just happens sometimes, and you're like, all right, cool. We got a 27 pick from the Kings. I don't know how that worked out, and maybe that's how it goes. But here's what I got for this potential scenario. It's the Celtics, the Clippers, and the Kings. So for the Celtics, again, outgoing Jrue Holiday, incoming Bogdanovich at 2 years, 16 million, 16 million per year. Jonas Valanciunas, 2 years, roughly about 20 million, 10 million per year, savings of $6 million for the Celtics. For the Clippers, outgoing Bogdanovich and Chris Dunn, and incoming is Jrue Holiday. For the Kings, outgoing is Jonas Valanciunas, and excuse me, Drew Eubanks, I believe, is also going from the Clippers to the Kings here. For the Kings, just outgoing is Jonas Valanciunas, and incoming is Chris Dunn and Drew Eubanks. Greg, we mentioned the Clippers as being one of those teams that could be interesting. The Bogdanovich, Valanciunas. I've liked Bogdanovich a lot in the past. He didn't really have a great season. So maybe it's just kind of like, let's try to get off this money with somebody that we can be better with, which would be Jrue Holiday. And then he's going to be kind of an upgrade over Chris Dunn as well, where they couldn't really figure out what that solid rotation is. So let's consolidate these two guys into Jrue Holiday, who's going to line up with Kawhi and James Harden and Norm Powell and Zubac, and kind of the Mavericks argument from the last trade, where it's like, hey, when I think about those 5 names, those are 5 real names that I could put out there together, and maybe we hit lightning in a bottle, and that becomes something. From the Celtics, let's see if Bogdanovich is a bounce back year. I think that could still be a guy that you talk about a guy who's tough. I think he's pretty tough. Like mentally, we saw it in the Olympics. We've seen it against the Hawks. He's not afraid. He's had some big moments. And then Valanciunas, at this point, I don't think he's much, but you need a couple centers to get through next year. So
Yeah.
throw him out there for a little bit. That's what I got for the Celtics on that return.
Again, another guy who's just like a big body that's not going to take any shit. You throw Valanciunas out there, like he's a huge liability, but he's going to bang some bodies around, and like maybe we don't get pushed around by Mitch Robinson if we have Valanciunas to box him out. Who knows? He definitely has value in certain matchups. And then Bogdanovich is another one of those dudes. I actually feel like both of these dudes have throughout their careers been like very fairly paid. Like they don't get underpaid, they don't get overpaid. It's just like that's what most people in the NBA of that level should get paid. They're always like the perfect example of that. And Bogdanovich having another, because each of them have one more year, right? So it's 26 million combined for the following year as well. So I think those are also because of that, they're very movable contracts. And I think Valanciunas would likely be the guy that probably gets routed somewhere else rather quickly in terms of like the fit on the Celtics. Bogdanovich, to your point, I think could have a bounce back year under Mazzulla. I think Mazzulla would really like having that piece to play with, a guy that I've always liked. But then who knows, maybe if he has a great year under Mazzulla, we look at him as like a really nice piece next to Jason Tatum for Tatum's year back.
Exactly. So to me, that's a relatively appealing deal, right? Like, again, picks, I don't know. It's really hard to understand what the market's going to be for picks. And the other part of this, and Greg, you alluded to this a few episodes ago, the unknown, right? Like, think about a couple years ago when we got Jrue Holiday. That wasn't on the radar until the Damian Lillard move happened. And then that became a thing 2-3 days later. You know what I mean? So that's what I think is going to happen a lot in this particular offseason is one move happens and all of a sudden everything that we've just played around with here, half of these guys are on different teams. And now all of a sudden it makes more sense to make that next move, which to your point, maybe we do this and all of a sudden Valanciunas is somewhere else because we're dumping that 10 million to, the Nets, the Pistons, I don't know, wherever has new salary cap, depending on what other moves are being made. So that's going to be the real fascinating part is that a lot of this work that myself and others are putting in, it ain't gonna mean shit. It don't mean shit, but it's fun to talk about. It's fun to play fantasy GM. So, all right, Greg, I've got 2 more on here. One that we'll probably be able to get through pretty quickly because it is just pure. Basically, this is the Celtics saving as much money as possible. Then I've got one that I think could get really wild. So let's talk about the boring one first, and then
Okay.
we'll get to the one that could get a little funky. So this next one here is the Celtics, Nets, and the Lakers. So in this trade, the Celtics again sending out Jrue Holiday. In return, they're getting Noah Clowney at 2 years, basically 3 million becomes 5 million the second year. Gabe Vincent expiring 11.5 million. They are going to save 17.5 million dollars in this deal. Again, roughly about 20 million is where they're trying to get under that second apron to remove some of the restrictions that go along with it, aggregating salaries, not being able to sign players, losing draft picks, all of this type of stuff, repeater tax. That goes a long way towards just resetting the books. For the Nets, they're sending out Noah Clowney, and they're getting back Rui Hachimura. So they're going to get an expiring contract in Rui, who's about 18.2 million. Give them a free look, and we'll see what the Nets are going to do. They're going to have some cap space, and I don't know, who knows what the Nets are doing. Lakers, they're sending out Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, bringing in Jrue Holiday to add to Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves. Probably a bit too guard heavy, but again, this kind of gets back to the point of I bet the Lakers are going to make other moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't think that, depending on, how much longer they really envision LeBron being there, maybe Austin Reeves is somebody they try to capitalize on with his great contract and go get a big guy. And so they're like,
Right.
okay, let's put Jrue Holiday into the Austin Reeves. So that's kind of where this trade would then start to make sense. And it gets back to who are the teams that make sense. Young team, Pistons, Magic, Rockets, and then these older teams, the Clippers, the Mavericks, the Lakers, the Warriors. That's where this could make some sense for them. Again, like I said, for the Celtics, it's Gabe Vincent, Noah Clowney. Nobody's going to get excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a resetting of the books. This is similar to the Jaylen Brown for Fred VanVleet, and then he never plays a second for the Celtics, and they save $40 million. It's not quite to that level, but it gets you very, very close to what one of your goals should be for this offseason.
The names might have to change, but I wouldn't mind taking a look at Rui in Boston.
So Rui's a guy that I've looked at a couple times, and I think honestly, yes, Rui's a guy that I've always kind of liked. Him and PJ Washington are two guys who, to your point that you made earlier, you were talking about Bogdanovich, but like PJ making 18 and Rui making 18, that's kind of about right. Maybe for Rui it's a little bit much, maybe it's more like 15, but who's gonna haggle over that 3 million at this point? Like, those guys are valuable. They're going to be guys that have a little bit of fluctuation in the playoffs, but they're very rarely, at least in my opinion, going to be unplayable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're just really solid 82 game guys that then are going to be very stable, 5th, 6th, 7th best player guys in the playoffs for you, and can have some nights where they pop and you're like, damn, glad we traded for that guy.
Right. Yeah. So Rui, when I see a name like Rui and he's got short money, expiring contract, I think I would probably rather take a look at him than a year of Gabe Vincent and just thinking about Jason Tatum spraining his ankle on Gabe Vincent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't factor that in. It's a good point.
Yeah, I don't want any of that, especially with Tatum being out this year. Noah Clowney's decent. I've always kind of liked watching him play when he's on the court. But I don't think he's really gonna do anything in the league, but he's not bad. But if we're still this is purely a savings trade, right?
Yeah.
So
like you said, change the names. This is all about how much money can we save in this move without having to give up, hopefully, picks to do so. And it's just one move. And now all of a sudden, if you trade Hauser, which I think Hauser for me is either, if he doesn't get moved, as in coordination with another bigger contract to save you even more money. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, cool, Brooklyn, give us whatever crappy second round pick. Here's Hauser just to save the money, and Shireman's going right into his spot in the rotation.
Well, I got to ask you this because Rob version 1, shout out Rob version 1, who's a big fan of the show, has been sending us some mock trades and whatnot. And one of the emails that he had sent us was in reference to the NBA salary cap rules, right? And it's something that I wasn't necessarily aware of. I know Corrales talked about this recently. This is like per Keith Smith and Spot Track, but
yeah,
for aggregating players and aggregating salaries, I didn't realize that it was actually what your roster looks like and your salary cap is after the trade, right? So
Yeah.
you can actually put together some players. I had no idea that this was a thing until Rob emailed us, and I was like, oh shit, like that actually
I figured it out by trial and
opens the
error
doors.
because I was like, wait a minute, like in this scenario, I could move Holiday and Hauser, and I was like, oh, maybe they just can't go to the same place if they go to different teams. And then it was like, then I came to the realization, like, oh, if you save enough money to get under these different restrictions,
Mhm.
but you have to do it all at once, right? Like
Right.
and
And there's
that is
so few
actually
teams that can actually make that happen, right? That's one of the issues.
right.
Why so much of this stuff has to be like 3 and 4 team deals to make it work. But I just want to give a quick shout to Rob for shooting us those emails and sending that, and then Keith for just absolutely killing it with this.
Yeah,
Salary cap is bullshit, man. Like
it's
it should I people should not have to think this hard to play fantasy GM.
right. It's pretty crazy. Well, I'm gonna be curious to see what the long term effects are, but it's yeah, it's a catch 22. There's gonna be a lot of movement, so it's fun to try to predict it. But then every time you try to
Mhm.
predict anything, it's it gets to actually what is gonna be part of what complicates the next place that I want to go here. And this will be probably the last one that I throw out here, Greg. And then we can touch briefly on the NBA finals coming up. But it was mentioned the other day where I can't remember, one of the ESPN shows, they were like, well, if Giannis is on the move, like, where would he want to go? And Windhorst was like, well, he might want to stay out east. And they started talking about who are the teams that could make a move for Giannis and still have a contender for him to play with. And everybody seemed to bring up Boston. And I was watching the clip and I was like, don't they know that they can't make this work? I've tried in the trade machine. Can't make it work. And Wendy didn't, who I really respect when Wendy's kind of like talking about different whispers. Like we've all seen the meme, right? Why would they do that?
Yeah.
So we've all seen that exactly. So when Wendy didn't blow it off and was like, yeah, Boston could be a team, but just kind of said it in passing, I was like, oh, okay. He would have probably shut that down pretty quickly if he was like, no chance that this is
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's just a lot of unknowns, but this gets back to the point that you just made, Greg, that Rob brought up, where if you do all the moves at once, you could make this work. And it also speaks to how fucking complex this the second apron is, because Jaylen Brown and Giannis, do you know what their difference in salary is next year, Greg?
Their difference in salary, I'm looking at it right now. It's about $1 million.
$1 million. And because it's $1 million difference, it has to be like a 4 or 5 team mega trade just to
Mhm.
even try to figure out a way to make it. Like, it shouldn't be that complicated for guys
Right.
that close in salary. Like
Yeah.
that's where this gets a little ridiculous. So I'm going to bring this up here. We're going to put it on the screen. I'm sure there's a mistake somewhere in here, but the general theme of the trade will prevail. So let's find a way to get Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Boston Celtics, Greg. Here's what I came up with, and it's a doozy. And this will definitely include picks going to different places here. So we're not going to get into what picks going where, but I would assume in this trade, the Celtics are going to have very little pick equity once this is all said and done. But for the Celtics, let's start here. This is a 4-team trade. We got the Celtics, the Nets, the Bucks, and the Mavericks yet again. Mavericks, I'm really putting a lot of stock in them being interested in Jrue Holiday. This is the third different trade we have with Jrue Holiday going to the Mavericks. So for the Celtics, outgoing, they have Sam Hauser, Jaylen Brown, and Jrue Holiday. So all 3 guys at once. This is how we're going to try to make this work here. Incoming in a variety of different ways and shapes and forms, Celtics have Maxwell Lewis, Day'Ron Sharpe, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and all while saving $23.6 million.
That's crazy.
If you can believe that. If you can believe that.
Well done, sir.
Hey, listen, Spot Track said it was okay. Keith, get at me, man. I'm just going by the machine that you guys built. So, like I said, picks are going out as well, too, here. But this would get you Giannis and save you $23 million. To the Nets, they get Sam Hauser and Daniel Gafford. Outgoing for them, it would be Maxwell Lewis and some form of a sign and trade with Day'Ron Sharpe. So probably some other picks coming to the Nets in that as well. For the Bucks, obviously, Giannis is going out. Incoming for them is going to be Jaylen Brown and PJ
I like that.
Washington.
Yeah.
And then for the Mavericks, Jrue Holiday coming in, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford going out, as well as some form of a sign and trade with Spencer Dinwiddie to make this all work. I would assume in this scenario where we talked about the Mavericks having 3 guys that kind of fit that roughly $15 million dollar mark with PJ, Gafford, and Klay Thompson, I would say the Mavericks get maybe not like a unprotected pick, but they get some form of probably pick compensation with both PJ and Daniel going out, although they're both on expiring deals. So, but we'd have to see how that plays out. But I don't want to get into the semantics of what picks it could be. But listen, don't want to trade Jalen, but it's Giannis. If this was if there's a path to get Giannis, like Jalen was just making a tour like a throughout the Boston public schools, doing like one of the coolest things I've ever seen an athlete do, just impromptu showing up at different schools. This is a blow to the community, but it's Giannis. And in the cold world of fake NBA GMing, if you can get Giannis and save 23 million, you get Giannis and save 23 million.
That's well done, man. You may have broken Keith's machine. Because it doesn't seem like this should work, right?
Because once again, there's like two random sign-in trades in there, which only work again if all of this happens at once, at least based on what the machine's telling me, because then that opens up or reduces the restrictions that the Celtics currently face by being so over the second apron and all the other restrictions that go along with it. But yes, that is my Picasso of Giannis becoming a Boston Celtic, so that when Tatum comes back, you still have Derek White, you have Jason Tatum, and you have Giannis, and you figure out the rest.
And you still have Porzingis in this deal.
Yeah, you would still have Porzingis in this deal as well too. Yeah, and you have Peyton Pritchard. So that's the group. You kind of see what happens.
So where are the picks coming from?
So the picks. The Celtics have all their own picks, right? So the Celtics are likely losing most of their picks in this.
And they're what I'm assuming. Maybe like one to the Mavs, one.
I think it's at least
or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is there's probably 3 picks going out, probably 2 to the Bucks, 1 to the Mavericks in some form, and like I said, the Mavericks one, I'm sure you can throw some protections on it. And I think with PJ Washington, with the Celtics getting the Mavericks involved because of Jrue Holiday, and then PJ Washington being rerouted, I think that's what makes it a little. I mean, Jaylen Brown's a very appealing return for Giannis in general if they're going to have to do it. But I think PJ then gives them like, okay, like PJ's a guy that we can now. Because they don't have any of their own picks, right? The Bucks have already traded all their picks, so they have no reason to stink. So it's like we still want to have some guys that we can look to build around.
Yeah,
and now
Jalen and PJ, that's a nice little duo. Like they're both dogs, right? So I think they would both be so pissed to having been traded away from like contending teams to fucking Milwaukee, and then for them to have to like figure out a way to come together.
Hope Dame Lillard comes back from a similar injury to Tatum, but he's 4 or 5, but he's not even 4 or 5. He's like 7, 8 years older. You know what I mean? Like that's your path now, and it's like it's tough. That's tough for them, but it's a nice chip on their shoulder.
Those dudes are gonna get buckets. They're gonna put up stats, and PJ Washington is gonna be like, "Yo, fucking pay me after this year. Like, I'm not gonna be a bargain contract after this year. Put me in fucking Milwaukee." No, that's a really shout out to you for figuring that out. I'm trying to think who probably says no. I would say maybe the Mavs. Like, is it worth it for the Mavs to trade PJ, Gafford, and Dinwiddie for Jrue?
Well, Dinwiddie's a free agent, so it's like they've got like his bird rights or something. It's once again, this is like a little convoluted, like a sign and trade type deal that only works if everybody's bought in. Like there's a lot of stuff that would have to happen there. Yeah. So
this is a wild fucking trade that you put together. So I don't think there's like any world in which it happens, but it's definitely fun to talk about and think about. That's what this whole offseason content is all about. So I'm into it, man. Like I think Jalen right now, like I've said, I do not want to trade Jalen for the 50th time. But you get Giannis and you save 23 million, like you said, tough to argue with. I think Jalen, what he's doing though, this offseason, it's pretty special, right? The fact that he's like, you know what, like you want to trade me, it's going to look bad on you Celtics. Cause I am out here in the community. I am like rebuilding this city's reputation with, the Black community and whatnot. And I think that would look pretty bad for the Celtics to trade Jaylen Brown, not giving him the opportunity when he is investing so much of his own money and his own efforts into the city of Boston.
Yeah, I mean, he's, to your point, somehow the Celtics ending up with Giannis is at least based on what we know of who could potentially be available. It feels like one of the only, at least scenarios, like I said, that's on our radar where it's like, okay, like it's Giannis. But outside of that, Jalen's gonna make you look like an asshole if you're like, oh yeah, we'll take Desmond Bain and Zach Edey, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like to cut costs, like that's gonna be he's making that a really really tough look. So we'll see, man. I think Jrue Holiday's value is going to be interesting. I feel like the KOCs and the other other people that are producing content out here that are talking about Jrue Holiday. Maybe he has more value than I'm giving him credit for, and he's got that
I don't think
championship
he's a
presence.
negative value contract guy. I saw our old friend Adam Taylor had posted
Mhm.
a video on Instagram, just like kind of going off on the idea that you would have to attach picks to Jrue. And like, I agree with Adam. Like, I don't think you have to necessarily, I don't think he's a negative value contract. I think there are at least a handful of teams, like I said at the
Yeah.
beginning of the pod, that are going to squint at Jrue and be like, he's the missing piece. So I
Well,
think
it's
for
not.
some teams, it could be.
See, I think the contract is a negative value. That's the issue. Like him on the court, no.
Mhm.
But the contract with everything that we're talking about, like to me, like it seems unless you really are 100% committed and you're not giving up all that much, that Jrue Holiday is the answer. And you might very well might be right that he is the answer. Like I think it's pretty crazy to take 3 years and 105 million for Jrue Holiday, who, let's just be real, he looked old this year. He looked old.
Yeah, okay. Yes, he looked older. He also was playing with mallet finger. Who knows how Jrue Holiday got mallet finger?
Still love that term, mallet finger. It's so
Yeah,
funny to me.
Jrue Holiday's a freak out here. But I think like with Jrue, he was such a good shooter 2 years ago, right? And he kind of came back to more like career averages this past year, but he was doing it with mallet finger, right? And
Yeah.
I thought his defense on Jalen Brunson was actually really good in the postseason. It's just like he had that one unfortunate play where he gambled and Brunson got to the line when the Celtics could have easily won game two. And then offensively, he didn't step up, right? And that,
Yeah.
without Tatum, that's kind of what you would expect those extra millions of dollars to allow Jrue Holiday to still be able to do
Which
at
he
this
did do
point.
last postseason. To be
Right,
fair, when they won the championship, he was a huge
right.
part of that.
With Jason Tatum on the court, though, right? So, like, without that number one guy, could he still put himself
Mhm.
into a position where it's like, oh, well, number one guy's gone, number two becomes number one. Who's going to be number two? And
Yeah.
it wasn't Jrue Holiday. So, like,
Yeah.
that's I think to your point about the contract being a little bit expensive, yes, but I think Jrue Holiday still a great defender, and I would bet on his shot coming back next year.
Yeah. It's all in the eye of the beholder. So it just depends what team is looking to do it and what other moves are happening at the same time. So it's going to be fascinating. We'll continue to have commentary as more rumors are rolled out, and we'll continue to look at the Celtics roster. We still haven't really talked much about Kristaps Porzingis and what that could be. Derek White, is there an opportunity to sell high? We'll talk a little bit about that later in the offseason. We got time. We've got time to kill, so we will get to those quickly here, Greg. Before we wrap this up, Thunder, Pacers. That's your NBA Finals. Tips off next or this upcoming Thursday. Pacers. Do you think what do you think is more shocking? The Heat as an 8 seed a couple years ago, or this Pacers team making the NBA Finals?
I mean, it's a little disrespectful to this Pacers team still. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. like,
It's true.
like
It's true.
if people have just been dismissing the Pacers even last year, like because they got swept. They made the Celtics sweat last year in the
They did.
playoffs, man. And people forget they didn't have Siakam until the trade deadline last year. This was the first full year with Siakam, and Halliburton was hurt all playoffs
Mhm.
last year. Like, and they still made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't know, man. I don't think it's like I definitely think it's surprising, but
Yeah.
it would have been way more surprising if they had beat the Celtics. But the fact that they didn't have to go through the Celtics, like, well, if someone takes the Celtics out, like who the fuck else is out there in the East? Like, there's not
Right.
that many teams. They went through the Cavs, which the Cavs were a great regular season team, but Halliburton was the best player in that series. And he was the best player in every round that he's been in. And he's been the best player in most series. And well, I guess he wasn't the best player because Pascal Siakam got Eastern Conference Finals MVP.
Yeah. I mean that's a little bit of like it's kind of like some of the Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown stuff last year. Like
Right.
whatever. You could have given that to either one of them. Greg,
So
these have been
I'm
your
not that surprised.
yeah, well, and these have been your Indiana Pacers to be fair.
Yeah.
So
That's a couple
let me
years
ask you,
ago.
'cause it's weird. They've been your Pacers. you've been a little bit not anti Halliburton, but he's not your favorite guy. But what has this playoffs done for your view of Halliburton? Because, like you said, he's been kind of the best player
Yeah.
in 3 straight series. You know, obviously Giannis had nobody, and Giannis put up insane numbers, so we can kind of put that to the side. He's the second best player in that series,
Mhm.
but he was the best player in the Cavs series, and was the best player in this series that featured Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, like in a team that beat the Celtics. So I don't know. Tell me, has this changed your view on Halliburton? Because that's the part that's breaking my brain, man. Is like Tyrese Halliburton is just the best player on a team that's going to the NBA Finals. Like that
Mhm.
means a lot. That means something. Like that's not. It can't be nothing.
Yeah, I think it's just like his ability to I mean, he's just such a like I talked a little bit with Hazard about this. He's just such a drink stir and like it's a drink that needs to be stirred. You know, when you're like reading the directions on something, you don't realize it said like shake well before drinking. Like
Yeah,
you take a sip of that and you're like, oh, this tastes like shit. But then you shake it up and you sip it and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Like with
yeah,
Halliburton, I feel like he's very kind of similar to that. Like you have to have all the right pieces around him. You have to have the right coach around him, but he's really special, man. He reminds me, I know 99.9% of the people listening right now are not going to get this, but you will. Like he reminds me a lot of Robbie Walton. Like when Robbie Walton at Latin school, like Robbie was such
hopefully there's some
a
really big UMass Lowell fanatics in the
maybe,
listening to the
maybe.
podcast.
But Robbie, like, he was one of these guys that when he came in, like, I was a point guard junior year, and then senior year, I was still supposed to be the point guard. And I told our coach, I was like, this guy's way better than me. Like, let him be the point guard. And I kind of feel like it's that kind of special quality that certain guys have when they just get out on the court. Everybody has to play to that style. And if you don't play to that style, then you're going to not experience success. But if everybody
Yeah,
buys in, then you're going to experience a hell of a lot of success. And Halliburton's just one of those dudes, man. Like when he's out there on the court, everybody is going full speed the entire game. He's talking shit. He's getting in the heads of the other players, like just as much as the Knicks got in the Celtics heads, he was in the Knicks heads. And it was, I mean, he outplayed Jalen Brunson, which was surprising because I thought Brunson was the best player going into that series and coming out of it. I'm like, I mean, you got to kind of make the argument that Halliburton is right.
so you got Pacers in 6 over the Thunder. Is that your official prediction?
I would be surprised if the Pacers win more than one game, just like honestly. But I don't know, man. I'm kind of talking myself into the Pacers, making a little bit of noise. The Thunder are so goddamn good, though. They're the
Yeah,
two teams that a couple of years ago, when the Celtics were playing them, I was just like, oh, these teams are fun. They're scrappy, but the Celtics beat them by 40 points. Right. But I remember watching them be like, there's something about these teams that kind of just like screams trouble in the future. And
you
I
know what
think
it is, Greg. Miles Turner said it yesterday. It's the power of friendship. It's the new NBA, the power of friendship.
well, that's why the Knicks didn't make it because they traded Dante.
It's that karma came full circle all the way back around. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I listen. I'm already tired of all the dumb ratings conversations that are going to come up, so I don't want to bring it up here. It's going to be a fun series. I think this is going to be two really entertaining basketball teams. I'm with you. I think the Thunder are going to steamroll this
Yeah.
in 4 or 5 games, but I also picked the Knicks over the Pacers. I also picked the Cavs over the Pacers. So, in that same vein, I hope that I'm wrong, and I'm really enjoying this Pacers team because I just don't know what's going to happen. Like it's really fun knowing that other than Halliburton and Siakam, you kind of don't know who Rick Carlisle is going to cobble together and is going to make impact plays. Whether it's Neesmith's usually out there if he's
You know,
healthy, but
what's interesting? Well, first of all, shout out to Alex who's in the chat. He says Pacers could make it interesting if it's close down the stretch. So Pacers should steal a couple. I definitely agree with that. But with the Pacers, you know who I think is a sneaky big loss in this series against the Thunder?
the guy that I forgot was on their team that got hurt, Tony Bradley.
Not Tony Bradley, but is it Jackson? Is that his name? Isaiah Jackson? The
Yeah,
guy
I
who's
mean
been
he's
hurt.
been hurt for a while, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But like I think he's the type of player that would actually thrive in a series against the
Mm.
Thunder. And I think without him, you know, it sounds crazy because he hasn't played all year, but like without him as that like little extra big that you can throw out there and go small, I think that's really going to hurt because I don't see Miles Turner lasting very long in this series.
Dude, we already mentioned it. Thomas Bryant's got this unlocked, dude.
True.
He's knocking down threes. He's
You're
banging
right.
bodies. They've got that covered. Also, and then I got to wrap this up and go here. One of the things that always sticks out to me with the Pacers is Obi Toppin is either sometimes not playing, or I just feel like he's got to be in the top 5 guys for most athletic. When he jumps, I'm in amazement every single time.
Yeah.
Like he gets so much elevation, and the fact that dude, this is the crazy part about the Pacers. Just like this is why it breaks my brain. Like Tyrese Halliburton's the best player leading a finals team. That doesn't really compute. The fact that they don't have a set 5, 6, 7 guys. They're just rotating in 10, 11 guys and figuring it out. Like Obi Toppin iced 2 games in the conference finals. And then other games he like didn't play or he played sparingly. Like
it's crazy.
It's nuts to figure out. Rick Carlisle, I think he had every time we talk about best coaches, he's got to be up there. He's already been I think he's pretty well respected, but this is impressive what he's done here. Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll talk more about it here. I think it's Thunder in 4 or 5 like you did. Hopefully I'm wrong. It's a fun, longer series. Pacers Thunder, looking forward to it. Greg, got to wrap this up. The hospital's not going anywhere, but it's just getting a little weird now that I've been here for an hour recording in the lobby. So we're gonna wrap this up. Put a bow
Take a quick
on it.
look around. Is anyone listening to you, like eavesdropping?
I've been trying to look around every once in a while and see if anybody's like walking through or going to be like, what the hell's going on over there?
That's crushing it.
Yeah. So far, no one has really wanted to jump in on my on my mock trade takes. Shockingly, here in the lobby, I was hoping that there might be an outside chance that happens. But Greg, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. Once again, for the audience, I'll probably be kind of sparingly on over the next couple of weeks here. At least once a week, I'll probably be able to squeeze a podcast recording in between that time, as needed. Greg will have some other stuff. Maybe we'll have some guests come on here. We mentioned Keith Smith a couple times. We probably should have Keith on and just be like, Keith, chat GPT this, explain the salary cap to me like I'm 5. Yeah. And just kind of just let Keith go and we'll see what happens. So we'll have some stuff for you guys here. As always, appreciate you guys rocking with us at Green MB Pod. Follow along, shoot us a message here, celticsnoise@gmail.com. Greg, I got to go, man. I'll catch you all later. Peace.